6440. I'm Sophie, and my favorite restaurant in St. Louis is Emo's, because you gotta have that super thin square pizza.
I'm Katie, and my favorite restaurant in St. Louis is Rockinelli's. Not really a specific reason, I just grew up on it and I absolutely love it.
And my name's Claire, and my favorite St. Louis restaurant is Fitz's because the root beer is incredible.
Alright, so to get to all of these restaurants, you have to use transportation. And one of the weird things about St. Louis is that for a city that's pretty decent population size, if we combine with the county, we'd be like the 7th biggest city in the nation. We have absolute trash public transportation. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
And so Claire spends a lot of time in Chicago for school. I spend a lot of time in Boston. Katie's traveled a lot. We all have seen really good public transportation systems, really bad transportation systems, and medium. So what do we think St. Louis needs to do with public transportation? What's it doing well? What could it improve on? Or just public transportation in general?
Okay, so I think that the city is not focusing on putting like money and like donating their time into the right aspects of public transportation, because one, they donated a lot of time to expanding the Metrolink through the loop, and I don't think that really benefited anyone except for like maybe WashU students if they happen to use it. But I think that took up like 4 years. It was supposed to be done, I think, like 2.5 years ago or something like that, and they literally like just finished it, and it's already had enough problems with running. So I think if all of that time could have been donated somewhere else to, I don't know, expanding it either north and south or east and west into other parts of the county, that would have been better, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm from Wildwood, and our northern neighbor who we kind of identify with culturally is Chesterfield, and I think a big thing that we have to tackle is the culture of wanting a Metrolink, and this is specifically with Chesterfield and even Wildwood a little bit, is that whole not in my backyard thing that we love to talk about, where people like Chesterfield didn't want the Metrolink so bad they were threatening to annex to St. Charles. And so I think if we start, we have to start with the idea of why having it is beneficial for people, and unless we have that conversation, I don't see people willing to actually even invest in the Metrolink in the first place.
Yeah, some of it is St. Louis is very much a commuter city in that people from the county just commute into the city. And right now, there's relatively few, if any, Metrolink stops in the county, and the city to county buses take forever. So there's no incentive to use public transportation, which means that ridership is down, which means that they don't see the need to improve it or create more of it, because it's a vicious cycle in that we need public transportation, but we don't use it enough to actually get that. And also we don't have turnstiles, which is really interesting. So anybody can get on. You don't have to go through anything for your ticket.
It is also very dangerous, public transportation in St. Louis, and honestly kind of anywhere you go. It's very it's a not safe, I guess, environment to be in. So maybe if we invest, I remember this was a topic on Donnybrook one time where they were talking about investing in the safety of the Metrolink. And I think we definitely should consider making the Metrolink more attractive in the sense of I'm willing to go on the Metrolink and feel safe while on the Metrolink.
Yeah, and I think part of that will come with definitely more people beginning to use public transportation, because I know a big difference between, let's say, Chicago public transportation and New York City public transportation is that the subway is packed all the time, so you're never going to be on a train car by yourself, or at least it's very unlikely, versus in Chicago, the red line and the green line, which go directly to the south side of the city and they go through Chicago's campus, 9 times out of 10, if it's late at night, it's you and maybe 10 other people total on your train, not even in your specific car. So it's a lot more, I guess, sketchy would be the way to describe it, sitting, because I know we were on the train and there weren't that many people with us, and it was just, if something happens, there's not that many people in this car, versus in a packed car in New York City, it's less likely to happen and, no one witness anything or anyone step up to help you or whatever. And so definitely if we can figure out how to get more people using public transport, I think safety will go up, definitely.
Yeah, but it seems like a like a chicken and egg kind of scenario where
Yeah.
like who would want to go if it's unsafe, but it will be unsafe. So
Boston has a really complicated history with public transportation in that when I first decided I was going to go to BC and I was like, oh, I'll take the public transportation, it's right on the line, my mom was like, make sure you stay off the Orange Line, because back when she was a student, she was traveling around and she was visiting in Boston, she played hockey. The Orange Line was where if you were on the Orange Line, you could get shot, bad things happen. And nowadays, any line of Boston public transportation system is effective. It's just slow. And so I think Boston has a great public transportation system. It's just really slow, so people don't want to use it. Whereas I think St. Louis, we just got, I think, a $21 million or $22 million refinancing to improve safety. But how we're improving safety is more security guards and more people just patrolling the area. But the thing is, nobody wants to get on a train, especially with kids, if it's gonna have, a guy with a gun patrolling it. Like, I don't want my 5-year-old, 6-year-olds to see that. So
That's true.
it's difficult when the measures that are going to help safety are also going to make people much less likely to ride.
You also have to think about, we have a growing Uber and Lyft presence, and when those two companies grow in their presence, people are less likely to take public transport. I know Uber and Lyft both have their own problems, but especially now Lyft has the scooters and all the other scooter brands, Bird, Lime, whatever. All of those companies are pretty much anti-public transportation, and those are big on college campuses. So
I guess my big push with mass transit is it's more environmentally green to go a group of people on one bus. This is why we carpool. At least that's why I wanted to carpool, because I talk a big game about being sustainable and being an environmentalist, but then I drive my car everywhere because in St. Louis, that's all you can do. There's all you can really do is drive, at least safely. And in Wildwood, it's super hard to go almost anywhere, even with a metro stop near my house. And so what we need to remember is, Lyft, Uber, driving, it's all easier, but we need to start investing in the idea of Metrolink. This should be a high up priority for us to consider transferring to.
Okay, real quick before we transition, I have one more thing about the Metrolink. It's that, come on, we're all Midwesterners. We all like to talk. Can you talk to people? Can you get people's stories if you're in a car by yourself? No! But when you're on the train, there's so many people. I get so much flack from my friends in Boston because I take public transportation everywhere. It takes 30 minutes to get to the airport if you drive. It takes 2 hours if you take the train. I take the train. Do you know how many wonderful experiences I've had on the train with people just wanting to talk? And then when they find out that you're a Midwesterner and you talk back, they're like, oh my god, you make some old lady's day!
Yeah.
We're Midwestern. We could do that with everybody. The train would be so much fun. Think about how much history you'd learn. Which is my thing, which now, combining environment, history, people, we had some real hot takes on Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke last time. And we thought it's not really fair for us to just drop all of this information on you guys without actually having any background. So today, the three of us are going to do some in-depth examining of a couple of Buttigieg and Beto's policies. So we want to start with environment. Katie, our resident green.
Right. So honestly, before actually going into the research of Beto, I didn't really realize how environmentally not bad he is, because my experience with Beto was the whole, he was the second highest person to get oil money, and he was from Texas. So I was already expecting, keep in mind, my family's from Texas. I know the culture there with the whole oil. They need it. It's their infrastructure financially. But I was oh, if you're taking money from people in oil, I don't want anything to do with you. But he actually recently just took a pledge of the no fossil fuel money pledge, and so did Pete. So I have to say both of them, thumbs up. But actually Beto is doing a lot of he just introduced a $5 trillion over 10-year plan for environmental change. I actually say environmentally, Beto would probably get the thumbs up from the environmentalist point of view, while Pete, he would get the okay, cool, you know what I mean? He's not bad. I have to say there's nothing bad Pete is really doing. And again, like the same way Beto is in Texas with oil, then Pete is in Indiana with coal. So they both have like a bad background with the idea of it, but they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, so I actually looked up a little bit about Mayor Pete's dealing with the situation of homelessness in South Bend, and pretty much in summation, on the outside, it looks like Mayor Pete does a lot for homelessness. It looks like he puts in programs and initiatives to solve the homelessness issue, but in reality, what he's doing is, if let's say, so they have a lot of tent areas, such as like camps where homeless people can sleep, and if they get too populated, Mayor Pete just has people come by and pick up these tents and just completely destroy these areas, because it's like it's almost like there's too many people there. But if there's some people there, it's okay, because then we're helping them out. But if there's too many, then they gotta go. Like they're disrupting everything. They gotta go. Mayor Pete also has an interesting spokesperson from his office. I forgot his name, but he was quoted saying that with prosperity comes an increase in homelessness, as if it was a good thing. And I was just a little bit puzzled by that. So then, he was basically also trying to claim, this spokesperson, not Mayor Pete himself, but representing him, the spokesperson was trying to claim that there's been an increase in people begging for money on the streets, which is a beneficial thing because it drives like downtown business and people being downtown, was I think the argument he was trying to make. So basically beggars, like the more beggars that are on the street, the more business we have downtown, which I don't agree with that at all. Basically Mayor Pete looks like he's doing a lot for the homeless situation, because on the outside he wants to look like he's doing something, but in reality he doesn't have those specific policies, which is a trend in the Democratic Party, as we've seen, and Sophie can tell.
Okay, full disclaimer, because I'm about to support Mayor Pete real fast, but full disclaimer, we all know I'm not a massive Mayor Pete fan. I donated $5 to Beto's campaign today, my first presidential donation, but I think some of it is, again, I said this in the last episode, Mayor Pete's a part-time mayor. There's only so much he can do. He can't vet every single spokesperson. I think it's telling that spokesperson is, I don't think, any part of Mayor Pete's presidential campaign. But some of it is that when you have a massive tent city, it's a combination of, you want to do something for homelessness, but you also can't have tent cities in your downtown area. We see this with things like, so my mom is a science teacher. She does a lot of conferences out in California, Monterey Bay, California. Beautiful, beautiful. Also big homeless population because it stays about 60 degrees all year round, which is kind of ideal. A lot of times in the morning, there's a city square and there's homeless people all over it. But also that city square is where the bus route is picked up. And so people aren't going to take the bus if there's a bunch of homeless people, so you have to move them before commuter time. And so what Mayor Pete's doing is he's letting them stay there until it becomes a problem for other people in the city, which is kind of like how we all have that rule where your rights end where mine begin.
Yeah.
Such as I can swing my arm up until I hit you. So
That's a good way.
I don't want to defend Mayor Pete for evicting people from their communities, but he does have to balance the homeless population of South Bend with the actual citizens, the non-homeless population of South Bend. But here's where Mayor Pete doesn't have an excuse. Immigration. Beto obviously grew up in El Paso, so he's on the border. It's one of the safest cities in America, even though it's that close to the border. Mayor Pete obviously is in the middle of good old heartland Missouri, or not Missouri, that's
Indiana.
us. Indiana. So he's not as close to immigration. It's primarily white community, whereas Beto would have, Beto, we're working on it, grew up where a more diverse, more immigrant community. Beto has a 3-step minimum plan on his website that outlines exactly what he's going to do from the first day in office to working with Congress. So he has things that he can accomplish on his own, things he needs Congress help with. He's going to, he's also on record talking about how awful the detention facilities that are separating families are. He is not opposed to abolishing ICE as long as we redistribute ICE's authority. Whereas Mayor Pete has made a grand total of 3 statements on immigration, despite having a massive and extremely complex plan that gave me a headache on how we're going to work with unions. He has no plan for immigration, and the best I could find was that he's going to do some things that support DACA recipients, but we're not going to completely legalize it, we're going to streamline it. It's very confusing, there's no actual details there, whereas Beto has like 15 bullet points of just like an approach to how we're going to do this. So in that case, Beto wins, but we all know I'm a big Beto fan, and I'm also pretty super liberal when it comes to immigration. Also, disclaimer.
My issue with how, I guess, Pete has handled that is acting like it's not like a major issue. After Donald Trump, we need a president that will tackle this issue hard, like genuinely, because we can't go from like, let's build a wall to let's talk about unions. We need to continue this conversation about immigrants. We have to continue to talk about the border. And like, obviously, I don't think the wall is the way at all. I don't even know what like the whole like argument is about because it's so complicated. So this conversation can't end with Donald Trump. This conversation needs to continue into our next president. And if that means Beto, I'm completely on board with. I've changed. I'm on the Beto board now, but I don't think he's gonna win, so I'm sorry.
Let's take a real quick moment. All 3 of us read an article today. We'll link it somewhere, probably below our video, that talked about how every Democratic candidate that's even come close to winning has been mimicking JFK. It also talks about how Mayor Pete's campaign strategy is to say yes to every single interview, every single possibility to be on TV, to be in front of a big crowd. He has turned down nothing, whereas Beto has announced his presidency. I think he got $1 million within the first 24 hours, and then has literally gone dark. Do we know where Beto is right now? No. He's somewhere in Iowa meeting people one-on-one. So let's talk about the article that compares Buttigieg to JFK and Beto to RFK, and let's talk about the difference in campaign strategies and what we think is going to work and what we think isn't going to work for them.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think that a really interesting point about that article was that okay, I'm gonna start with. So I think a really interesting point about that article was that it talked about how JFK knew that if he was to actually, go into what specific policies would look like and get details of what he wanted to implement, he knew that he would lose the moderates, and he didn't. Clearly, that's not how you're going to win over the Democratic Party, because you can't just have the leftists, you can't just have the moderates, you need all of them in order to be on your side. And so that's something that Sophie was saying has been used by Democratic winners actually, and has, made them more likable. And I thought that was a really interesting point, because versus RFK, who is, more similar to Beto and more, on the ground, talking to people on an individual basis, like clearly open about things and less about doing things for show. I thought that was a really cool comparison. And it makes sense. It makes sense why more people know about Pete and more people are like, oh, I'm on the Pete bandwagon, because he's not as specific as Beto is, even though like in reality, everyone claims to want specificness, but that's not what they like the most.
Yeah.
All right. I think some of it is that JFK was not, this is a hot take, from a historical perspective, JFK was not that wonderful. He looked great. He didn't do a whole lot. He had a nice family, and he talked the talk, and he was super charismatic, but he didn't actually do anything. Also like Obama, but that's another video. And I think whereas Bobby after he went through his crisis of my brother was killed and went through a deep depression and came out and really connected with people who also had the same amount of emotional trauma as he did, despite not having the same trauma. So RFK was never comfortable in the halls of power. RFK was always more comfortable on the streets with children who had lost, parents to gun violence, or with protesters against the Vietnam War. He's more comfortable with just your everyday American who has suffered something. Mayor Pete is highly educated. He knows 8 languages, whether that's just able to have a conversation or read them, but he knows them. He's smart. He was, he did a tour in Afghanistan. He has a wonderful husband. He's your all-American Rhodes Scholar who has everything, which is what JFK did. He's put together, he's polished, he's brilliant. I'm not going to deny that. And Beto's out there. Beto is out there meeting people, talking one-on-one, and I don't think any of us could really give like a cohesive outline of Beto's story, like this is what he did, then he did this, next was that, because this campaign is not about Beto. This campaign is about the people that he's trying to help, which is evident on his webpage when the first thing you see is, when you click on immigration is about the stories and the people, not the policies.
I guess my whole take with this, though, like, I agree with what you guys are all saying, but at the end of the day, who's doing better in the polls and who's getting more donors? Pete. So as much as we like how Beto is running his campaign better than Pete, it's not what the people are liking, other than us at the moment.
Well, there is a difference between total grassroots and then $100 to take a picture. Mayor Pete, I'm in college.
$100? That's ridiculous.
Never.
I can donate.
I wouldn't even pay 10.
Right.
I wouldn't even pay 10.
I would pay
I would
anything.
sneak a picture. That's what
Yeah, you stand there and you're like, wow, look, Mayor Pete's talking.
Yeah, no, $10, bruh. No, $100, bruh.
Which is the difference. I think it ultimately comes down to, I think, a lot of liberal elites like Mayor Pete, because he's smart, he's educated, he's literally everything Donald Trump isn't. And we can all see that debate stage with Mayor Pete on one side and Donald Trump on the other, and Donald Trump's over there saying something horribly racist and sexist and not even using proper grammar. And Mayor Pete just sits there and calmly rebuts it using language that all of us have to use a dictionary to look up. And everyone's like, that's what we want. But is that what we want? I don't need a president to talk circles around foreign leaders. I need a president who understands what I'm going through and is willing to be down in the trenches with me.
And also, it's not what I want either, but I also don't think it's what the American people in general want. And Pete will never beat Donald Trump. No matter what the case is, Pete won't beat Donald Trump. I think there's very few people that will.
Beto also couldn't win Texas, so let's just...
Beto, you're not gonna win. You're not gonna beat Donald Trump. You're not even gonna beat. You're not gonna beat Pete. Okay.
Oh, that's a hot take.
We'll see about that one.
We'll see about it. But I've been reading articles, I guess, today to prepare for this, and most of them are about how Pete has taken Beto's spot.
Yeah, but who's more loved, JFK or RFK when it comes to it?
Who became president?
Anyway, okay. Well, we have made it to our destination. So any last thoughts?
Well,
study your history.
Studying your history is always good.
Yes.
Donald Trump.
Oh, call your
work
reps.
on the history.
And on top of that, school's coming up, guys. So whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, you gotta get ready for school, get all your work done, get yourself in order.
And wear sunblock last few days of
wear
summer.
Sunscreen. It's hot still.
All right. Well, thanks for watching.
Bye.